Hello, students, and welcome back. In this episode, Mr. Armstrong teaches plot structure. Let's not waste any time at all. What the heck is plot structure? Let's start with some definitions. Let's start right here with plot. What is plot? Essentially, it is the sequence of events in a story. That could be a book, a movie, whatever. These events are interrelated, which means they're connected to each other, and one affects the next. This happened, and so now this other thing happens. That's essentially what plot is. Plot is what happens in the story. An interesting plot is broken up according to a structure, and the most common structure is the one I'm about to show you. Did you write all these notes down? I hope so, because there's more. So take a look over here at this little drawing. Often, when we think of plot structure, we think of it in terms of a triangular shape or a pyramid shape, as you can see. And so it would definitely be worth it to write down this shape and the different parts that have been labeled. There will be definitions for those different parts in a bit. But basically, at the start of the story, number one, we have exposition, and then an inciting incident. Rising action is next, then climax, and then falling action. And finally, at the end of the story, we have a resolution, or we have resolution. We think of it in terms of this structure because of the idea of rising action and falling action. And once we see the definitions for those, I think it'll make a little bit more sense. And so, if you copied this down, let's move on to some more definitions. Okay. Let's start with these first three. So you can pause now and write them down and then listen. That's probably the best way to learn the information. Or you can try to write them down while listening. That sounds a little harder, but I'm going to explain them all. You can write them down as well. Exposition. This is the beginning of the story, and this is a very important part of the story where the setting and the characters are introduced. The exposition is where we find out the who of the story, the where of the story, and maybe a little bit about the what of the story. We need all of this information to be able to understand what's going to happen in the story. And this is all set up in the exposition at the beginning. Next, we have the inciting incident. And this is where something happens. We've been introduced to the world through the exposition, and now we see what's normal. And then something out of the ordinary happens, which changes everything, which gets the story started. Some sort of an unusual event kicks off the action of the story. Something happens. The characters are suddenly faced with an extraordinary choice that they have to make. Something has happened, and they have to react to it. They have to. That's the inciting incident. It happens after the exposition. After we already understand what's normal, something abnormal happens. And that's what gets the story started. It's next, rising action. Things get more and more interesting. The fun and games begin. The characters make choices and the stakes get higher and tension builds. One reaction leads to another and things get more and more heavy as the time rolls on. Rising action. You got these notes? Let's look at the next set. All right, take a look at this next set. Climax, falling action, and resolution. After the rising action, tension keeps building and building and building, and the climax is when it's as tense as it's going to be, and something has to change, something has to turn, right? And it's the point, right? That's also literally where that pyramid turns directions. It's the turning point. This is when things could not be more tense. It seems like the heroes could possibly lose everything, and something has to change. A choice has to be made that's going to affect the rest of the story. The climax. After the climax, we still have some action, but we have falling action. And this is where things start to fall in place. The results of the decision become clear. Tension unwinds, and we see the outcome of the events and what the characters decided. The action continues to fall until, at last, we arrive at the resolution. And the resolution is just the conclusion. It's the end. There might be still a little bit of story left, but basically, at this point, all of our questions should be answered, all of our problems resolved, all the loose ends should be tied up. And we get a sense, or we actually might even see, a return to some semblance of normalcy. That might be a new normal, since things have changed, but it might also be a return to the way that things were. But things resolve to normalcy, and the story ends. Got it? Now, if you start to think about stories, you'll see that almost all of them follow this type of structure. There might be some variation here and there, but for the most part, any of our stories will follow a structure like this. Or they'll be very, very boring. There's an infinite number of ways that it can be accomplished, but this basic structure has been working for generations, and it will probably continue to do so. But this story is over. This has been Plot Structure. Hopefully it made sense. If you have any questions or you're curious about particular stories and how they work, you can go ahead and post those in the comments below. If you have any ideas on other videos that you would like to see on this channel, you can put that in the comments below as well. I'd love to see them. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to teaching you again very soon.